let's go ahead and get started. Want to welcome everyone in this evening. This is a first of its kind. We've been talking about doing something like this for quite some time. Want to just start off with some introductions. My name's Fred Rundle, superintendent of our school district. And on the call tonight, we'll have two moderators, and that's going to be our principal, Mr. Nick Wold, and then Andrew Howison, a student who's at Gonzaga University as a sophomore this year. So I'll kick it to them in just a second, and then we get to really also introduce the other stars tonight, which are some amazing MIHS graduates who have joined us tonight. And when we really started thinking about this night, it was really with the intention of trying to reach out, not necessarily to freshmen who are off in college or doing different things, but really to think about those who have graduated a couple years ago. And we've kicked around a lot of different ideas, but it's really about where are they now? How did they get there, and what helped them to get there? And we want to have a chance for some of our former grads to talk to us as a community and provide us with some really valuable feedback about that process, so that our parents can better understand what does that look like, especially our families who their oldest is coming through the high school right now, or maybe is even in middle school or elementary school. And, what was that process like for students? And then for some students who I see who are also in the audience tonight, I think they're trying to figure out, what does it look like in college, and where are we headed? So by the end of tonight, we want to celebrate some of our graduates and then also help our community really understand that there are many pathways that a student might take, not only in high school or through their K-12 experience, but also once they're beyond. And I am grateful to our grads who have joined us tonight, and just want to extend a heartfelt appreciation to all of you as you are in varying times within your school year. Some of you are on semesters, and you are probably through your midterms and on into heading towards finals. And some of you are in quarters, and you've just launched a new quarter and scrambling there. So thanks for making time tonight. With that, I want to kick it over to our principal, Mr. Nick Wold, and then he and Andrew will take it away from here. There is the chat option that's available, and Mr. Henry and I will be monitoring that, and might be sending some questions then along, weaving them in and out as well. So Mr. Wold, take it away.
Well, thanks, Dr. Rundle. And first of all, alumni, graduates, I'm thankful. Seeing all of you on the screen, but just giving your evening up to spend time with us, just to have a conversation, really powerful, and it really shows that you are prideful in Mercer Island, and hopefully proud of your experience. But we haven't really done a lot of the shaping work with any of you. So I think for the people that are watching tonight, and if it ends up being seen after we're recording and so forth, we spent some time, Dr. Rundle and I and Andrew, kind of talking briefly about what we might see this evening kind of look like. But really, we hope for an organic conversation, and maybe we do have some questions to ask specifically to answer. But I hope that then maybe takes us into some other spaces that we may not have envisioned. And so really, it's just about telling our story at the high school, both the great moments and the things that really have prepped you to be where you're at now, but I think also just some areas where our school will grow as well throughout this process. So I'm excited for the night, excited to be a part of this. This is our first chance at this, our first opportunity to go down this road, to learn from all of you, but also for other people in the audience to be able to learn as well. So really grateful to see all of you this evening, and hopefully it's a learning experience for our guests. Andrew Howison, Sergeant Andrew Howison, or whatever title we'd like to be able to use. Andrew, do you want to say a few things before we get into this?
Yeah. First, I know I can speak on behalf of the students. We're really happy to do this. We all come from different backgrounds through Mercer Island, and we're all at different places. So if you're a student or parent here, you're going to hear a wide variety of students doing different things, and we did that on purpose. So the people that are here go to school in different states, public institutions, private institutions, big institutions, small institutions, Matthew's at the Naval Academy. So you'll hear a bunch of different stories, and Milo will be joining later. They took a gap year, so you'll be able to hear a bunch of different options. So no matter what you are planning on doing, we hope that a student here can resonate with you. So the point of this is just to kind of hear about what these students did in high school, how they felt that Mercer Island prepared them, and then, how are they doing now? Thriving in college. So our panelists are not going to answer every question just because we don't have time to do that. But each panelist is going to be able to answer a question and then sort of bounce off of it. And then we hope it does turn into kind of a nice conversation. And you'll hear different opinions from all of our panelists. So it's going to be great.
Now, Andrew, you've called in some favors to get some pretty esteemed alumni here. So can we take a moment so that they can introduce themselves and unmute and join us into the conversation here? Andrew, would this be the perfect time to do so? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll call out the names since I'm sure everyone's different. And then panelists, if you could say your school, what school you attend, where it's from, what your major is, and then if you have any brief school demographics. So the size, something like that. So we'll start with Gracie Hennessy.
Sorry, I was looking at how big UW was because I honestly don't know. I'm Gracie. I go to the University of Washington in Seattle. I'm a chemical engineering major, and it says it's around, I believe it's like 60,000 students across all three campuses, but Seattle has like 40,000 people.
And that's where you're at, Seattle. Cool. Thank you, Gracie. Matthew?
Hey, good evening. I'm Matthew Pingallo. I'm a sophomore at the United States Naval Academy. I'm studying aerospace engineering, and we're about 4,400 strong. That's across all four classes. So we have a nice classroom size of about 20 students to one teacher.
And where are you located, Matthew?
Yeah, and we're located in Annapolis, Maryland, which is just south of Baltimore.
Thank you very much. Lucy? Libby?
Thank you. No worries. Thanks, Andrew. I'm Libby. I'm a sophomore studying information science and UX design. I'm minoring in music at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I believe we're like 50,000 total, but 34,000 undergrad.
Thank you, Libby. Molly?
Hi, I'm Molly. I go to Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. Very cold here right now. My major is inclusive childhood, as well as I have a creative writing minor, and I believe there is a little bit under 16,000 undergrad.
Very cool. And then, last but not least, Mustafa.
Hi, I'm Mustafa. I'm a sophomore at the University of California, Los Angeles. We are about 30,000 undergrads and 10,000 graduate students, and I'm studying electrical engineering.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone. So as you can see, wide variety of schools, locations, as well as majors. Fred and Nick, am I good to start off with asking a question?
Yes, Andrew, and you can call me Nick. This is lovely, Andrew. We're just that post-graduation experience. I just love this opportunity for us.
I'm reading everyone's name, and I was like, Nick, oh, that's a new level
well, Andrew,
of bonds.
Andrew, I just wonder, since everybody just got a chance to describe what school they were at and where they were at and kind of in our country and so forth, even though we kind of envisioned kind of going in order, there's a question of choosing and applying to college. And it might be a nice segue just to how did you know what colleges to choose and the right fit for them? Because they all kind of landed in a variety of places. So you've collated quite the eclectic group tonight. And so I'm just curious, what maybe spawned that choice from their time at Mercer Island High School or throughout MISD, and why they're where they're at, and why they've chosen to study what they've chosen to study and so forth. Is that what do you think, Andrew?
I like that. I wonder, is there any panelists in here who have felt like from early on they have an experience that goes out to them and they kind of knew what college was for them, or does someone just want to step in and kind of share what it looked like for them?
So go ahead.
Oh wait, Matthew, you go.
Okay. Well, I was going to talk about my experience and learning about the Naval Academy. Basically, I learned about it through a family friend, Connor Pettigrew, who is 2 years ahead of me. And I didn't find out until like the end of my junior year, probably like the May of junior year, about what this place was and what you need to do to get in, what kind of qualifications, and what the application process is like. Because it's a pretty lengthy application process. It starts well before most Common App applications open up. So I was pretty late in the game, but that's still like nonetheless, that's still I still had the opportunity to apply, and I was I applied like just in time, just right after hearing about what this place was. So it's totally was not on my radar in the first 3 years of high school, and I just by happenstance just happened to find this place.
And did it, once you applied, Matthew, did it just come down to that's where you wanted to go, or were there other schools that you decided that you were thinking of before you ended up picking the Naval Academy?
Yeah, so I just in high school I was really like set on aviation, so I was really like locked in on Embry-Riddle, and I was looking at the Air Force Academy as well. I wasn't very serious about that though. And I guess I just narrowed down my options as I visited more schools my senior year. The Naval Academy gave me the opportunity to visit for a weekend, which is a really nice opportunity that they give to prospective candidates if you just show your interest. Their admissions office gives you the opportunity to visit them. And that's kind of where I really like locked in on the Naval Academy, and I put that as my number one.
How about you, Gracie?
I kind of figured out what I wanted to do end of senior year. I was committed to a different college for like 2 months. I was committed to Purdue. I always knew I wanted to do engineering, but I always said I didn't want to stay in Seattle. So I kind of flipped around like very last minute and decided to come here. And also coming in, like UW has an engineering program that you don't specify what specialty you want until end of your freshman year. So I also kind of had no idea what I wanted to do within the sphere of engineering. But it was like through the end of senior year and starting college, like I kind of figured it all out and figured out what I liked academically and research wise. And that was a really cool experience. But I kind of had a similar thing to Matthew of like, oh no. And last minute, like changing plans.
And not to, get ahead, but it seems like it's worked out, even though you kind of had that, uh-oh moments and you had to switch. Where you're at now, you wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, I would not change a thing where I am now.
How about you, Libby? Let's hear from you. What was your story like?
Kind of the same route a little bit. I was dead set on going to college in California for as long as I can remember. And Ann Arbor is not California in the slightest. But for me, it was really big visiting campuses. I'm really lucky that I was able to do that as soon as I visited Michigan. And I saw just the culture of the campus. People were out and about on my tour. They were talking to each other. The Mercer Island alum that I met for like coffee when I visited were so kind and so wonderful and so accepting. I knew on the plane ride back, that is where I wanted to be. I wanted to be surrounded by people that made me feel welcomed and that were kind. And I honestly think that kind of culture aspect and who you're going to surround yourself with is overlooked a little bit in the college decision application process. And I'm very lucky, and I feel like I definitely found my place here, and I wouldn't change anything.
Libby, can I ask you a follow-up question really quick? Because what a beautiful thing for you to say, that finding your people is a big part of that experience, and the environment and the culture, and seeing that firsthand. What were some of the other choices? I know you said you were interested in California. What were some of the other schools that you were kind of teetering on until you finally landed on Michigan? But what were some of the other locations until you found your people? What were you also considering?
Yeah, so pretty much every California college under the sun. Like, you name it, I probably applied and wanted to go there super bad. And then I visited, and I just remember thinking, like, oh, I don't know if these people are like my people. I don't know if this community has, a place where I can find my niche. But I also think so it was literally just California and one school in Michigan. That's kind of where I was in between. But I really, it was the people that made it. I also think, kind of given the advice, my parents always told me, they were like, wherever you end up going, like, don't stress about it, because you'll bloom where you're planted. So that did take a lot of the stress off of it for me, knowing that other people, and like my parents, my support system, had the confidence in me to do well in any community, I think was great. But yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you. It was kind of just everything California, and then super last minute, I was like, Michigan sounds pretty cool.
Well, I think that, well, first of all, I'm glad to hear what your parents.
That's a great freeze right there. I think what he's trying to say is he's glad that your parents had such an idea. Sorry, you froze up there, Mr. Wold. You look great.
It was beautiful too. Whatever I was
great.
saying was going to be great. Yes. Libby, I guess my point is that it wasn't based on program. And so often we're researching program and we go to a place because of program, but you were looking for something different. You wanted environment, you wanted culture, and you wanted people, and that you would grow and blossom anywhere, but that those people were your people. And I just liked hearing that phrase, because I think so often that is a very important part, yet that is not the thing that we always pursue.
Yes, I would 100% agree. And my program is really niche. I wanted to do UX design. I knew that for a fact, but I also knew that our paths aren't linear. I could go to a small college in California and study something else, maybe study computer science or psychology, and maybe one day still end up in UX. So that was comforting for me too. And that's, I think, why I was able to focus a little bit more on the people.
I'm going to jump over Molly. We will get back to you, but something sprung, and I'm going to go to Mustafa. I've known Mustafa. He's been one of my best friends for a while, so I'm able to call him out here. Mustafa, just rethinking back to our senior year, I know you had a maybe slightly more stressful college situation. Can you just talk about maybe a little bit about what's your college situation looked like and how you picked your school and how you're doing now?
Of course, I can speak to that. So for me, I was just very nervous in general applying to colleges. I was just like, what if I get in nowhere? What if I don't go to college? Even though I don't know, maybe I was just very panicked. So I was at the point where Susie Brown wrote to my lovely dear counselor, wrote to my parents, because she's like, he's applying to too many schools. He needs to be stopped. I'm blocking some of these applications. She also referred me to therapy because I tried to exceed the Common App and use a third-party platform to apply to more schools. And that happens. That's very realistic. It is maddening for some people, but it all worked out. I'm super happy where I ended up applying to, like where the applications actually went through to. And I mean, I, like Libby, wanted to go to a different part of the country. I actually wanted to go to the Northeast really badly, but I ended up in California, and I am so happy about that, because the nice thing about California is that there's so many MI people nearby. Like, two of my best friends, Mason and Quinn, are an hour away, and I get to see them like every month almost. And I'm really happy how it worked out. But the process itself, yeah, sorry, Andrew.
I was just going to say, I don't want to interrupt you, but taking a step back, was all of that stress warranted? Or do you think you put a lot of kind of unnecessary stress on yourself?
It was unnecessary, but honestly, I was happy I did it, because I know I did my best. I know that where I ended up is where I should have ended up, and I'm glad I tried, and there's no harm in that. Like, just don't take it so far where it's going to affect your health physically. I think like I drove myself a bit mad, but in a good spirit, you know? And I learned some really good writing skills from writing a lot of different supplemental essays.
How many schools did you apply to, Mustafa?
So I applied to 25. I tried to apply to more, but Susie Brown blocked them. And I love her dearly for that. I think she made the right call. But yes, that was the final count.
And then I wonder, Molly, is your story slightly different from Mustafa's? Let's hear about that.
I would say mine's a little different. I knew I wanted to go to East Coast, but unlike Mustafa, I did not apply to that many schools. I believe I applied to 6 or 7. I didn't go too crazy. Obviously, that worked out for him, but I was probably like the opposite spectrum. I kind of did everything last minute. Obviously, it worked out for me. But why I chose Syracuse was actually through some of the educators that I worked with in the special education classroom at Mercer Island High School, and they had said some teachers that they'd worked with and advisors that they'd worked with to become the teachers that they are today actually came from Syracuse, and so that really piqued my interest, and that's why I ended up choosing Syracuse was majorly because of the education program and the especially the inclusive education program we have here at Syracuse.
Molly, any shout outs? Any people that you, I mean, we're on a recorded thing. I mean, any special education teachers that you recall of playing that kind of guidance role that you got a chance to experience from the high school?
Christy Kenyon, of course, amazing educator.
Molly, I think you kind of bring up a nice segue to a question we had here, which was kind of what at Mercer Island High School prepared you or made, brought you into a direction of what major you wanted to go. Was there a class? Was there a teacher, a program you did at school that made you want to do the major, go to the school that what you're doing now? So for me, I did radio broadcasting at Mercer Island High School with Joe Bryant at KMIH 89 The Bridge. And even though I'm not doing media here, that taught me a lot about maybe wanting to do public speaking, wanting to be able to do more businessy things. So right now I'm majoring in business, and I think a lot of the skills I learned in radio broadcasting, I was also in leadership, go very well over to business. So I'm at Gonzaga, we have an entrepreneurial leadership program. I'm a part of that cohort, which is 20 students, and we're constantly up there pitching business ideas, working in small teams, so forth and so on. And that's something that I learned in radio and in leadership. So I'm wondering if you guys on the panel here had things at Mercer Island that helped support you, and then maybe talk about things that Mercer Island that other schools didn't have. I talked a lot about radio. A lot of other schools didn't have radio. They, like, you guys have high school radio, or, I would talk about how robust our leadership program was. And they were like, yeah, our leadership didn't do anything. So what at Mercer Island do you think has helped, gave you advantage or helped you decide a career while in college? And I can also just call on someone so everyone doesn't unmute. Let's start with Gracie again. Oh, and then we'll do Mustafa.
I transferred in to Mercer Island my sophomore year. So at first I was like really scared to get like involved in anything, and it was also COVID. But the best thing I did was just joining like random clubs. Like I remember the first one I joined was mock trial, which I try not to bring up that often to my friends, but it was probably one of the best decisions I made. And then from there, I would say the two most influential extracurriculars I did for college specifically was ASB officers with Andrew and 3 other awesome people I worked with all the time. And then the second one was joining journalism club run by Chris Twombly. Like, I don't know if he's still here, but he really shaped my high school career, and like learning how to write like that and learning how to write in a way that's not in an academic sense, and like figuring out what you're passionate in about when it comes to writing and just expressing yourself was one of the best things I learned through that program. And I still use skills like that in college. And even though I'm not focused, right now I haven't done a lot of like leadership stuff that's similar to being like spirit commissioner or anything, or journalism, but I still use so many skills I learned from both those positions. And honestly, having niche things like that when applying to colleges is what makes you stand out, as well as teaching you just random things that you'll carry on for probably the rest of my academic career.
And yet, Gracie, you are in engineering, right? You're in engineering, isn't that correct? And and so, what about any of your math and science from the high school as you look back at it?
I think we were all scarred by Yoder's AP Calc class, but she prepared me so well, and I'm still, calculus is the strongest subject I have. Like, there's a lot of math you take as an engineer, and some of it makes no sense, but if it has anything to do with calculus, I am super strong in it, and I honestly think a lot of it is because of her. Also, Mr. Sue in AP Chem, he went to UW, so it's interesting seeing, like, I remember when I started my first chemistry classes at UW, it's like some of the labs were the same, and like some of the stuff they teach us here is the same as how he taught us. So that was really interesting, like going into the same, because I'm also chemical engineering, so we would have taken almost the exact same classes, which is cool to see on like the other side of that.
So it's safe to say that you felt pretty prepared when you came across those subject matters in your school. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Mustafa?
I think the social skills that MI teaches you really go a long way. I think just the context of talking to people, treating them with respect, and being very dignified in how you address people who you're meeting for the first time or in formal settings goes a long way. And that's one of the things that I think MI prepared me for better than anything. Like, obviously, MI is academically strong, but being able to communicate with many different people in different backgrounds respectfully and professionally is such an important skill. And MI does that extremely well. Just from your teachers, from your clubs, from your sports, everything. It's very dignified.
Yeah, Mustafa, would you say it's kind of taught you time management? I know you did a lot of clubs. Talk about that. What kind of things you did in high school, how you balance that, and how does that look like now in college?
Yeah, I was a student board rep, actually not for Mercer Island, but for like the general King County area through like a different educational service, which was MI related. So I got to go on a trip with Andrew and Dr. Rundle, which was a lot of fun our senior year. And I look fondly on that. But that was very interesting to be able to work like at a county level to work on those kind of filing and claim reports. But then at the high school, I was involved with like Interact Club, which is like a sponsorship of Rotary, where we work on volunteering and stuff to Rotary International. And probably my closest to my heart, just because of all the friends I made through it, was cross country. I was one of the captains for that senior year. And that was a really fun experience to be able to involved in a sport that you can be competitive and you can go far in, but also it's a community sport that is co-ed and has almost 100 people, and we have co-captains. It was a lot of fun too, because you had to manage time with that, with going away for like meets and away races that were far, or even in other states like in Oregon or the other side of in Pasco, Washington. It taught you to manage your time with school and also just being burnt out and tired from doing a sport. I think learning from the fatigue of that, still doing your work for MI, which has so many student athletes who go on to play like sports in their respective schools, working with that fatigue from your sport while managing a busy schedule is also really impressive that MI teaches you to be a student athlete.
Thank you for that. Matthew, I know at the Naval Academy, your freshman year is not easy. Plebe year, there's a lot of mornings you're up, etc. Tell me how you fared compared to other plebes, and what, if there were any skills that were relatable from Mercer Island to the Naval Academy. I know they're different beasts, but is there some similarities?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest credit that I want to give to MIHS is just how like challenging their academics are in a good way. So like I took 3 AP courses, and they were AP Psychology, AP Music Theory, AP Comp Sci. All 3 of which are not very applicable for aerospace engineering, except for maybe AP Comp Sci. But I just took the regular like standard classes that every student is required to take at MIHS, and like those were still like at the same level, the same caliber as to what we experience here at the Naval Academy. One of the biggest challenges that midshipmen, which is the student body at the Naval Academy, one of the biggest challenges that students, the midshipmen face are the academics, just the rigor of them. And it doesn't matter what major you're in. Every single student has to take physics, has to take chemistry, has to take all the way up to Calc 3. But for me and my younger sister, who's a freshman here, academics are not so much of an issue for us. And that's just because of how well MIHS has prepared us. Just like I just completely undervalued the education I was receiving at MIHS. And that wasn't even through AP or advanced classes. I'm not that smart and that bright as a student. And I still managed to get by just fine here, just because of how well prepared I was from MIHS. I also want to shout out Joe Bryant and the radio station. I was also part of the radio program for 4 years. And, one of the things that they tell you well is how to communicate with your words, how to articulate whatever it is you're trying to convey in as few words and as simply as possible. Because on the radio, all you have is your voice. And that's just has taken me a long way, especially in the military where it's a people business. Here we're developing leaders at the Naval Academy, and a big part of that is being an effective communicator. And the radio program has definitely taught me a lot about speaking up and how to articulate what it is I want to say in an appropriate manner.
Thanks for that, Matthew. And I remember last year you were telling me about how much better prepared you felt when you were taking Calc 2 and 3. There was, I think, a story where you said almost what percentage of midshipmen couldn't complete, a certain number of Calc classes, and you were able to breeze by that. Do you credit some of that to just the learning from Mercer Island and just maybe the step zones that they had put in place, and you're able to just build off of that?
Yes, absolutely. I believe that the course that you're talking about was Calc 2. The final exam, about like 80% of students ended up failing the final exam, and thankfully I was not one of them. I took the Intro to Calc course my senior year at MIHS, and that just put me miles ahead of many other students that I was in calculus with last year.
And you got an A, right, Matthew? Not to brag on, but we got this guy. If 80% is failing and Matthew's getting an A, I mean, that's good stuff.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Milo is here. Milo, are you around? Able to talk? Maybe not. I want Milo to introduce themselves, but maybe we will wait until
maybe when they come on camera.
The first place to sit down, and I think that my network should be.
Oh. You here?
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Maybe not anymore. Okay.
Hello?
Are you there, Milo? Hey.
Give me 1 second to find a place with a better network.
Sounds good.
I just got out of class, so I'm just sat down as soon as I could to join. So give me 1 sec.
Sounds great. Molly, let's jump to you. Let's hear about what helped you with your path to Syracuse.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree a lot with what Matthew said. I agree the academics definitely helped me prepare for Syracuse, but I would say I only took one AP here at Mercer Island High School. I just took what was necessary and what I thought would be best for me, which I think was really good. And I still felt like the general education classes prepared me extremely well for high school. But I would say the biggest takeaway that I think prepared me for high school was more of the creative classes I took, which is more, as multiple people have spoken about, the radio completely helped me come out of my shell. I learned how to public speak, which helped me really blossom and be able to communicate and advocate for myself in college. as well as different programs such as improv, which gave me more just confidence and ability to improvise and work. And I think that helps a lot with in my education. I'm currently placed in a kindergarten classroom, and through the improv, I'm ready to, improvise those kids and keep the day rolling through that. And so I just think those classes really, really benefited me. I think, of course, math, science, history, and all that type of stuff is of course, impactful and important, and was really well done at Mercer Island. But I think that as as I claim here, I really value the creative aspects that I was allowed to take at Mercer Island and through those paths. And I think that was the biggest thing that prepared me for college and also helped my application stand out. But yeah.
I couldn't find the unmute button there. Yeah, I think it's the mix between the amount of things being offered at Mercer Island. I think when I talk to my roommates and other people around, they're just blown away about how much we offer, like radio station, improv, all of this. I mean, a lot of students that they could do sports and a club or two. And the fact that we have mock trial and all of these groups, I think just really let students kind of pick what they kind of like and what they want to continue on early in high school. And I think, we hear about radio and that just going and then running. So speaking of creative people, Milo is now here and able
Hello.
to talk. So Milo, why don't you give everyone the spiel? So your name, the school you go to, and then your major. And I believe you took a gap year, right?
I
And
did.
if you could talk about that, that would be great.
For sure. Hello, my name is Milo. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm currently a freshman at UC Berkeley. I'm pursuing a dual degree. So I'm pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Theater and Performance Studies and a Bachelor of Science in Society and Environment, which is kind of like environmental, social sciences, policy, law, econ, stuff like that. I did take a gap year after I graduated high school. And I think that was a really wonderful thing for me. I'm really grateful that I did that. I ended up kind of working through the summer, saving a lot of money, and then I was able to travel for about a month. I went through Turkey and Greece, and then from there, I moved to Los Angeles, and that's where I spent most of my gap year. I worked for a civil rights group doing street canvassing. So I was kind of just like out on the streets of LA talking to constituents, raising money, stuff like that, which was a difficult but rewarding job, and was able to, through that, be financially independent while I was in LA. I had a blast. I think that, I really encourage gap years. I think, if it's something that people are interested in, I think it's something that they definitely should do, because for me, it allowed me to come into college with a much clearer idea of what I wanted from my college experience. It made the transition into like living in a dorm, living out of state a lot easier, because I had already kind of gone through like this trial run of like, what does it mean to have a roommate? What does it mean to, have to get all of my food myself? What does it mean to be in charge of my own schedule? Yeah.
Milo, can I ask a couple of questions about that? And so great to see you.
Mhm.
Thank you for
Yeah,
joining
you
us. So the practical side, or the procedural side, excuse me, of your gap year, did you secure your admittance prior to your year away, or did you actually go through the application process later down the road? How did that process work?
Yeah, great question. I did not apply to college when I was in high school. I thought about it, and then I realized that a lot of the schools I was interested in, specifically the UC system, didn't offer deferences. So if I got in, I would just have to like reject and apply again the next year. And I think that was the right decision for me, because it allowed me to kind of, well, first of all, it allowed me to put everything I did in my senior year of high school on my college applications, which I think was a really influential part of, why I am at Berkeley, because a lot of the high school achievements I had happened after the application season was over. And it also just gave me more time to work on the applications, gave me, again, a clearer view of what I wanted to do. I don't think that I would have been pursuing environmental sciences or environmental policy if I hadn't taken that time to kind of, consider my options in that way. And man, I don't know how y'all did it to do like be in school and also be writing college applications. That was so much work just as it is. So shout out to you guys.
Well,
Milo, when did you? Oh, sorry, Mr. Wold, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I just, that's an interesting pathway, because Milo, you used your senior year almost as a strategy, because accumulating awards or other experiences, you got a chance to build out a pretty robust resume in that way. I haven't heard anybody shape it that way, but that I can understand the strategy. Also, just to get to know yourself and be in another place in the room, like all of those things really resonate with me. But the other side of it is to actually utilize many awards and many just different things that you're going to pursue, but also positions of leadership and so forth that many seniors accumulate over time, that you get a chance to utilize those. So yeah, I just hadn't had anyone express that. It's interesting.
It's a nice perk.
Well, and I think it's interesting. Some college students have
Sergeant Howison, Dr. Rundle was trying to jump in there.
Yeah,
so if you can just let him have a little mic time, that would be great.
Keep going, Sergeant.
Well, I was just going to say, for some people, the transition starting school, especially if you're semester school in early August, is tough. And one of the questions we have is, how do you manage the transition from high school to college, and specifically academics, but also just the social emotional challenge of it? And, what does it look like to graduate in June and then potentially 2 months later transition into college? And what does that look like? And just the kind of toll that that can have on you, especially if you're Matthew and you leave 3 weeks after school, compared to Mustafa, who starts in, practically October, same with Gracie. So I just think the social emotional well-being transition can be difficult for some. And I don't know if anyone wants to answer that, or Fred, you want to ask your question?
No, great lead in.
I'll say something on this, because I feel like a lot of people going to college are worried about academics, and I think Mercer Island has set me up extremely well for that. The hardest part for me in college was the beginning of freshman year, and I actually remember calling Libby about possibly transferring, because that transition is so hard. And especially if you go to UW, I'm warning you now, all of your friends leave you for a month because everyone's on semester. And I remember it was just me and Mustafa and all the other quarter kids. And then it was a really weird dynamic being in the city I grew up in, but not knowing anyone in the school besides the 50 people from your high school who goes there. But the hardest transition for me was settling down, figuring out what I enjoyed. Also, I lived in a sleeping porch my freshman year, which was a huge transition. But I remember vividly this call with Libby of, I don't know if this community is right for me. And what she said earlier about focusing on schools based on community and not just the program is so, so important when making that decision, because that was the hardest part about college for me.
I just kind of want to bounce off of that, Gracie. I do remember that phone call, and I remember talking to Gracie and being like, I don't know what I'm doing either. everything is new. And that was very stressful for me. I mean, the food you're eating in the dining hall is new and objectively not very good. And like, I mean, I guess it depends on what school you go to, but at Michigan, it's not very good. And all the people you meet are new. And like, that is a lot of stress. And I think, honestly, that was such a benefit that Mercer Island gave me, is our community is so strong past the island, you know? So like friends from Mercer Island, I could always call like Gracie and talk and feel support there. My parents, I leaned on so much. They were always there for me. Like old teachers I reached out to like via email, and they were supports to me. Just so thankful for that community. And then we have like Mercer Island family dinners where all the Mercer Island alum at Michigan get together once a month to like cook dinner and have dinner together. And I think it's so wonderful that those ties go past the island and to other states and even into Seattle, and relying on that and realizing what a resource that was to me was very helpful and helped a lot of that stress that I feel like I was experiencing my first semester freshman year.
There's a question in the chat. I don't want to get us too off topic. I actually lost it. Fred, do you want to?
Sure. And there's probably we could probably apply it to any of the schools, but this was specific to UW. Gracie, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful were the weed out classes within your major?
They're like,
You want to define weed out classes too? Not everyone may know exactly what those are.
UW, I know a bunch of schools like this. UW has this culture of the way they grade, a certain percentage of the class has to fail. And it sounded like Matthew had somewhat of like, I don't know how you grade, but just like this super intense grading. And your first 2 years, like especially like pre-med kids and engineering go through weed out classes because they need to weed out this percentage of kids. And what's stressful about that is I was lucky enough to be DA into my major. But the thing about UW is if you're not DA, which is directly admitted, and you have to apply for your major later on, and that's what can make these weed out classes extremely, extremely stressful. And it gets worse when they're like layered on top of each other. That's where it gets really bad. But a scale of 1 to 10, probably like a 6. I definitely had my moments where it was like an 11, but in retrospect, it's not that bad. And it really teaches you a lot and like prepares you for later departmental classes.
I'm going to share just since I moderate. Gonzaga being a smaller Jesuit institution, private institution, there is no quote weed out classes. As there is, students don't have to fail, not to say that there isn't hard classes or hard majors at Gonzaga that people don't fail out of, but there is at Gonzaga and a lot of the Jesuit schools, you know, the class sizes are around 20 and there is no percentage to fail. So I wonder, Molly, being at a private school, Syracuse, but bigger, if you see the kind of the same thing or not.
I feel like I see the same thing as you, Andrew. I agree with that.
Anyone else want to hop in and kind of share their perspective about weed out classes? Maybe you, Libby, being at a bigger public institution.
I don't think we really have weed out classes. Our beginner classes, or I guess introductory classes for almost all majors, even my major, which is pretty niche, is for the first 2 years, your class sizes are about 100 to 200 people. So they're pretty big. You're kind of in this lecture hall and there's like 1 million people, and I never raise my hand because that's terrifying. But yeah, we don't really have weed out classes. It's more just like very, very, very large introductory classes, which I personally don't mind. They are required to have discussion sections later in the week, which is about 20 students, kind of like your average high school class size. So that's where you really learn the material. So I don't mind it, but yeah, we don't have weed out classes.
I think one of the questions in the chat was around things that you were connected to at our high school, but also, I mean, it would be nice to hear what you have now started to become connected with in your college? Maybe things that you're now interest areas, anything that you've now gotten yourself involved in there, maybe something that spawned from MIHS to now where you're at, ways that you're getting yourself involved, whether it's employment, whether it's philanthropic opportunities, whatever that may look like, that next phase of continuing on in a path of service, whatever that may look like. So love to hear maybe any of those things that you've pursued.
Milo, I think yours is able to translate from doing theater in high school and college. So do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, I did a lot of theater at MIHS, and I was incredibly grateful for that entire theater department, especially for Daniela Melgar, who made it a whole run. And that's something I have continued into college. It's something that I am studying in my classes and also have done a lot of in terms of student organizations. That's where I've found a lot of community. I was very nervous coming into this really large public school where most of the students here are from California. A lot of them are here with people from their high schools. I don't really know anyone here, and that was really, really useful for me to be able to get into these student theaters and meet a lot of people there. I've also been involved. I just came from at Berkeley, we have student taught classes, and they're one unit, maybe 2 units, and a lot of the time they're kind of continuations of clubs. So I just came from my ecosystem restoration student-led class, and that's something that I've really enjoyed getting involved with, that I didn't really do a lot of in high school that I found in college. But yeah, I shout out to the Mercer Island High School theater department. I mean, a really especially coming here and hearing a lot of other people in the arts and their experiences in high school. We have a really, really wonderful community and really strong program in Mercer Island that was incredibly impactful for me and continues to, propel me forward.
Maybe start back a little further for some advice before we leave kind of the choosing and applying to college. A number of our students or families, especially if it's their first child coming through, are always wondering, when should I start thinking about college with my kids? When should I start talking about college? What advice do you have for our parents, and certainly for other students as well? But what advice do you have for parents who might have a middle schooler, an 8th grader, or maybe a 9th grader about the process from a student perspective?
So my advice would be to just don't close any doors, keep all paths open. Military service was not something that I really considered, like I said earlier, in the first 3 years of high school. And there's plenty of different ways that, in the military service specifically, there's plenty of ways that you can serve. You can enlist, you can do ROTC, which is what Andrew's doing, which is, being in the military reserves while simultaneously being a college student, or you can also be at service academies like me. There's a multitude of ways that you can be involved in the service, but I would just say keep your options open. Don't limit yourself, and don't just have a narrow scope on having a set path, because a lot of times things don't work out the way that you want them to. So if you have a certain college in mind for since 8th grade, just make sure you have backup plans and make sure you just keep your options open. That's just the biggest piece of advice, because you never know where life will take you, and you never know where your heart will change.
And I know other students are going to answer this question. So Matthew, thank you for that guidance, because so often I get questions from middle school families, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Here's my pathway. This is my scope of where I'm going. But if it becomes so narrow and rigid, you might miss the opportunity to learn and grow in another way, and might broaden your scope of where you really want to go, and exposing yourself to a variety of different opportunities. So I just appreciate you framing that for everyone of where you're at now and what you may have not got a chance to have those opportunities if you had a closed mind or opportunity set earlier on in your high school experience. So thank you.
I'm going to share. I think the biggest thing of advice is just don't think about it is so early. I really think the sophomore year of high school to junior year is when you need to think about it. And also the activities you want to do it because you love them, not for college. I just really see at college, the people who did things in high school are doing them because they love them, and they're continuing to do it. And they're just so much more successful because they're not burnt out. They're doing what they love. I think there's always kind of a stress of like, you need to get it worked out early, and it needs to be done super early. And it's just, for me, just not as, I think, necessary. That being said, I'm not going to one of the best institutions in the world or in the United States. It is the best institution within Spokane, so I'll give it that. But if you're shooting for that, I get wanting to think early, but for 85% of students, they're going to end up at great schools like Berkeley and UCLA and University of Michigan and Syracuse, all the schools, the Naval Academy. And I know that everyone wasn't, and UW, and I know everyone wasn't thinking about it in 8th grade of going, oh, I need to do as much as possible as early as I can, because that just leads to burnout, and it doesn't make you successful. So I went to Gonzaga. I joined ROTC the day before it started, and within my first year, they looked back at my high school transcript and they said they liked my grades, they liked my what I've been doing in college, and they offered me a full ride scholarship to go to Gonzaga and then to be in the Army after. And I just think that kind of shares about how many different avenues there is and ways for being able to get scholarships or do things at different schools, where you don't have to have it all planned out exactly, and you don't have to go super early to 7th grade and start thinking, what does my child need to do to get the upper hand? Because I think what you've been hearing is that we all come from different things: theater, special education, design, aerospace. And this wasn't something that started in 6th or 7th grade. But this started in high school, and this started because students were doing clubs that they were interested in. And I think I hear a lot of times is just kind of a stress and an anguish about that. I've hosted a lot of high school seniors who are interested in ROTC in Gonzaga, and they just tell me about the pressure. I remember the pressure. It's a lot, but you can't let that consume you, and you can't let thinking about it so early on where it's just going to crush you. So I don't know if any other students have things to add, but that's my soapbox.
Molly, were you leaning in a second ago that you wanted to add?
Not specifically, but I completely agree with what Andrew said. I didn't actually start really doing much college work until like the end of my junior year, and didn't tour college until my senior year. So obviously that feels really late, but like Andrew said, I just really wanted to focus on my mental health when I was going through the college process, and I wanted to focus on my mental health and still allowing myself through high school to do what I love. And so I think that it's important to focus on that. And then of course, education and figuring out where you want to go or what you want to do should be at the utmost importance as well. But I think if you know who you are and you're able to still be yourself, that's going to get you the path to college.
I will also add, oh, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say quick, like, also, if you feel like that in college, everyone else feels like that. And I still have no idea what I want to do. And whenever I do, like, I am engineering, but I'm also a certified nursing assistant, which was a curveball. Never thought I would do anything like that. And it has been such a good experience. And so I just want to emphasize that that mindset continues on through college and is like the biggest. I like how Molly phrased it, like if you know who you are and what you like, that's gonna get you really good places.
Something else I'll just kind of add on is that a big part of, finding the right college for you is going to just be like fit. And there's a certain level of fit that you can't really know until you're getting close to being there. I thought for a really long time that I wanted to go to a small liberal arts school. That's the direction I was heading. I wasn't really looking at like big public schools like Berkeley until it. Oh, one sec. Can you still hear me? All right. I'm in the theater building. But I think it wasn't until like I was, looking at colleges like right before I was gonna go that I realized actually I do want a big school. I do want this like city environment. I had to like go and experience it before I knew that. It's stuff like that where you can't really know years in advance. It's good to start thinking about, but yeah.
Well, there was another question that came in the chat, and it's a unique question too, of maybe some things that you were not prepared for, or you felt like, oh, I wish I would have known this. Because remember, there's families and students that have joined our time this evening that are looking for maybe some guidance, but also, okay, so that was your experience and it sounds like it was a really positive one, but maybe what was the experience that you were going, hey, I wish I would have known this, or I wish I would have done that. Some of that, not only through our experience, but also into your first few years at your particular school. So if you wouldn't mind just maybe, a misstep or something that you would have liked to have known more about, or something that we could have done better to prepare you. Any of those things, I'd be happy to have that part of this discussion too. I mean, I think one of the powerful pieces of our school is that we are interested in growing and learning. I mean, part of this evening, actually, of putting all of you together to have this conversation is for us to not only tell our story, but help us grow our story of ways that we can help our students find where they need to go. And again, Molly, taking the time to get to know yourself, I think that's a beautiful phrase, taking that extra time to know who you are and where you want to go. Yeah, powerful statement for sure. But yeah, maybe some missteps, maybe something that you would have liked to have seen from our high school, or just things that you wish you would have known freshman year, things that you would have done maybe a little bit different. So any of that from any of the panelists this evening?
I can start off with this one, and I think my misstep actually segues really nicely, especially from what Molly was saying. I didn't take the advice of explore your interests, like actually explore your interests, as seriously as I think I should have. I was really focused on, going to the best school I could get into and taking a lot of APs and, doing things that I thought looked good on my resume. And I'm so, so grateful for all of those things. And in some way or another, they did steer me towards my interest. But I think it took me a lot more trial and error my freshman year, and even now, to figure out what I like and what I don't like, and what I'm truly passionate about. And I think that if I would have listened to myself a little bit more when any time in high school, and done things that I truly was interested in simply just because I was interested in them, I think I would have saved myself a little bit of angst, maybe not a whole lot, but just a little bit my freshman year. And yeah, I think that was definitely something that I could have changed. I won't change anything, but yeah, that's definitely, I think, my misstep.
I'm gonna say my final piece here because then I gotta run out. But in terms of missteps, something that was difficult for me in high school was that I saw a question in the chat about private college counselors. I didn't have a private college counselor, and I also just didn't have the same level of family support that I think a lot of my friends and a lot of the students at Mercer Island High School have. And that was something that was difficult to me to kind of find a way to navigate the college application system, especially because I was doing it while I wasn't in high school and I didn't have like a high school counselor to talk to. And, you know, what was really helpful for me in finding a way to navigate that was talking to people who were coming from different backgrounds, who were coming from community colleges, or who were, you know, had taken even a longer break from school before going to college, as I did. I think that can also help, you know, if you're in that position where you're feeling like you're kind of behind and you don't have the same resources as the people around you, to remember that there are tons and tons of people who take diverse and winding roads to college or through college or, you know, to whatever they're doing post grad that end up in a really happy and successful place. And now I have to head out. But thank you guys so much for having me. And I don't know if anybody is, you know, curious about gap years or about Berkeley or about like going into the arts in college, feel free to reach out to me. I don't know if there's a place that I can like put my email or something, but
I was just going to segue before you go out. I just kind of want to get a sense. There's been another question that came up around someone whose own student is thinking about, you know, their interests or what they're pursuing, and would you be willing to reach out, or if a family reached out to you, any one of you, would you be willing to help out a student here at MI or a family? And so I think the best way to do it is, why don't we have our families reach out to Mr. Wold or me? We'll put you in contact with the student that you want to get in touch with, and we'll handle it that way. So Milo, I really appreciate you offering that, and it's a perfect segue into something. So thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Thank
Milo.
you guys so much for having me.
So I think any others, you know, I think that is a good question around, you know, where didn't you feel prepared, as Mr. Wold kind of teed up, or where are those places where either we could do better or something maybe in our community or anything? Is there anything with that? And you can weave in too of whether or not you had a private counselor. I think there is some curiosity from some of our families who are joining us tonight. You know, we have our college counselors, we have our counseling staff at the high school, but did you supplement with another outside counselor as well?
Matthew, I think you're just going for the button. I see you.
Yeah, so I did supplement with a counselor for my all the civilian schools that I applied to, and not for my Naval Academy application. I will say it's like, sure, it's nice to have someone to read over your essays, but you know, I don't think it's a teacher at MIHS an English teacher at MIHS that would deny a student from, you know, reading their college application essay. So like, I think the resources at MIHS are more than enough for you to have a successful application. Yeah, but it was nice, but it's absolutely not necessary to, you know, pay for an outside college counselor.
Civilian schools. See, all of you're just going to civilian schools. I love it. We haven't heard from you in a little. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
No, who are you going to say? Because
I was going to say Mustafa. We just hadn't heard from him. I think
I agree.
Anything, Mustafa, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, no, same sentiment as Matthew. I also did have a private counselor for a bit to discuss some ideas I wanted to share, like on my applications, and also just because I tried to apply to a decent number of them, just getting some advice on those. And it is helpful. I think it's helpful to have like a steering hand just to give you pointers for stuff that you can't always see in your writing, or even your family can't, because, you know, they know you so well. But it's not going to be people who know you that well reading your applications. Sometimes it is nice to just have that outside source. But like for my applications, for where I actually ended up, like for the UCs, that was something I didn't even take advice from my counselor on, because I did it very last minute. So you definitely can do it yourself, as Matthew said, but there's really no harm in getting a counselor just because it's super helpful to have that feedback. But also rely on everyone at the time. You can rely on your school counselor. Susie Brown was mine. I ran some of my essays by her. I got her opinions. I also asked my English teacher, Mr. Smiley, from freshman year actually, for some advice. And that was helpful. Like, just rely on the people at your high school. Also feel free to reach out to someone, but you don't need a private counselor.
I'll quickly share mine. I did use a private college counselor, and I think I'll kind of share the same sentiment. It was nice to have them be able to kind of pick the schools and like you do a personality test into it. But once it came down to the actual application, it felt like I could really do a lot of it. And I think this kind of goes on to my question: in what ways was I not prepared? Maybe not for college, but maybe just for the process would be videos like this that we're doing now, like being able to see students who've actually gone through it and being able to talk to them. I think one of my favorite parts about Gonzaga is the community that we have, and the community at Mercer Island is great. I mean, the fact that Libby's able to get coffee with them once a month is just crazy. And, that's what sets us apart from just about every other school in the nation, but being able to build on that. So if you are really interested in the Naval Academy, being able to reach out. So it would be nice to start to build in the high school just ways that we can do more things like this. And I believe that we're building in college counselors at the high school, which is great. And I think just continuing that, because really the process, you don't need a college counselor. There's some people who can't afford them, and I know they're different levels of prices. And I just think that they're nice to have. And my mom didn't. She was like, I'm willing to just pay for someone so I don't have to deal with my son as he's trying to navigate this. It's just easier to be hands off. But that's not a luxury that everyone can afford. So I understand that, there's some people who just can't afford that as well. And, I hope as time goes on and as college admissions develop, so does Mercer Island. Anyone else? Students?
I want to add on to that about, if you can't afford a college counselor, there also are programs out there. I was a part of MyLeap, which is a nonprofit Mercer Island organization that did provide me with a college counselor and other resources I needed for college and beyond. So there are resources out there for people who you can't afford one, or you don't necessarily want to pay for one. You just have to seek those out. But I was a part of MyLeap. It's MILEAP.
I'll speak on there were like two super intense college counselors I remember that like a lot of people in our grade had. And I was lucky enough for my parents, same as Andrew. My parents both didn't want to touch me during this time. And I had that help. And looking back on it, a part of me kind of felt like she was trying to get like us to go to the best schools possible so she could like post it. And I totally don't think it's necessary. It's super helpful with the organizational side. But when it came down to picking schools, like the personality test I did with her didn't really mean anything to me. And the writing, like Twombly and Goldhammer, go to Goldhammer. He also, senior year, I remember the English classes, we would go over our college essays, and it's a big part of senior year. Because it's not just an essay, it's who you are and it's your profile for these colleges. And honestly, like the Mercer Island community was a lot more important to me than that counselor, even though she was awesome. And I'm so lucky to have her, but it really came down to me putting in the work and talking to people at Mercer Island.
We did have some prompting questions around just that transition. And Gracie, you talked about it a little bit earlier, just about, I don't know what kind of bunk thing that you talked about your freshman year, about where you like lived, but just the transition into college, the first few year or two, resources, support systems. I was surprised when my oldest son went to college and all the different support systems and writing labs and things that the university provided. That was unbeknownst to me. We had no idea as a family of all the ways that the university was going to support my son. And so I'm just curious about some things that you learned that you may not have known when you went to school, and some things that were a surprise, or things that you maybe would give for a student that is maybe junior, senior year and thinking about their first freshman year of college, and what that transition to college life kind of looked like.
That question was directed towards you, Gracie, I believe. Was it?
I can talk.
It could be directed towards anybody, Andrew. I appreciate that. But Gracie just mentioned something earlier that I was like, I wonder what that was like. But any of those types of topics, that transition freshman year is really unique. So I remember my freshman year, and I was on an all male floor, and then genders were separated by floor, and I thought that was really odd. And then I had a random roommate and so forth, but just a variety of things of the transition that you experience, because there's different unique pieces of all the places that you have all gone. So, but Gracie just said something that resonated with me, and I know it was some of the questions that we had for us in our prep.
UW is super weird. I'm personally in Greek life. UW's not a big Greek life school, but personally I've had a really good experience with finding your community. And I'm going to mention the sleeping porch, but I think like the big thing about freshman year is just join stuff, go to stuff, meet people, because you're going to be I'm now with people that were my random lab partners, and now they're in my major for 2.5 more years. And just meeting these people and joining communities is the most important thing, and just figuring out what you like. But my living situation, UW's the only university in the country that you live in a sorority your freshman year. So I went through recruitment, and then I was thrown into a sleeping porch, which is, I don't know if Matthew or Andrew will appreciate this. It felt like barracks, just like 35 girls in one room for the whole year in bunk beds. Personally, I enjoyed it, which is kind of weird saying that out loud, but you get really close with people. So, but that's all I'm going to say, because I feel like a lot of people don't have that experience at all. But it's definitely, you got to get comfortable like living with other people.
Libby, that's you shaking your head there. Looks like you have some experiences with that transition, and anything else, but I saw you kind of shaking your head there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of echoing off of what Gracie said. So important to get out there. I think that was something that was really surprising to me when I first went to college, was how much of college happens outside of the classroom. I thought that 90% of my life was going to be like lectures and homework, but so much of my growth came out of navigating independence for the first time and building relationships either through friends or organizations. And I think, and managing my time, because I had all this time, which I was stoked to have all this time. But then I was like, oh my gosh, I have 2 weeks worth of laundry that actually haven't got done. And I've had so much time to do it. So that was definitely big for me. And the best things that I did for myself freshman year, which I know is not possible for every major, but I took the minimum amount of credits required my first semester, which was so helpful because it gave me that time and energy to pursue and apply for and be engaged with the community and student organizations and clubs, which have just provided so unlimited benefits till this day. So I think that was wonderful. I know, again, like it's not possible for every major, especially the STEM ones where your schedule's kind of built out every year, but that was definitely huge for me because that's where I think most of my growth happened. So yeah, that's definitely what I had to say on that.
Molly, we haven't heard from you. What was your experience like?
Obviously, Syracuse, New York is a bit far from Mercer Island, Washington. It takes me 2 planes to get to and from. So it was a big transition, especially the distance. I expected it was going to be hard, but I think it was what was to be expected. But I think the best thing for me transitioning here was like getting into a routine and also joining clubs and activities. I think when I first came here, I immediately got into a routine of classes and and choosing these certain clubs and organizations. And I think that really helped me because that helped me just feel more at place and more like with that routine. That's what I'll do day to day to day. And so that made me miss home as well. And also, as mentioned, clubs. I'm in multiple clubs. I'm also on like our club boxing team. I'm a tour guide, so I do a lot of different things here on campus. So I think that's the best way to help yourself transition onto a college campus is just by meeting people and meeting all different types of people and really like it just branching out from what you usually do. And I think that was the best way for me to adjust because I really like learned who I was going to be on college campus through meeting different people outside of the people from Mercer Island because I was the only one from Mercer Island that came from my grade. So that was a big transition.
How about advice on rooming? And sometimes in colleges you get a chance to have roommates, and sometimes you can get a single. If you're Gracie, you get 35 in your room. What are some advice in terms of living and that living experience freshman year? If you're given a choice, what advice would you give to students?
I can definitely speak on this. I'm actually an RA, so I manage about like 140 kids specifically, and their roommate conflicts I deal with on a daily basis. Um, and it is definitely a fun experience to get a random roommate. Sometimes you can meet someone totally different from you and become super close. But a lot of the time, I spend a lot of nights dealing with roommate conflicts because of personal boundaries on the bathroom, on food in the room, on fights between roommates. So I think you really need to be prepared if you're going random just for anything that could happen, not to be pessimistic, but just because I do deal with this so much on the other end, it can be unpleasant sometimes. So you have to be ready for that if you're going random. And but that also means to show that you can also have really good roommates on the other end because there's a lot of roommates I don't deal with problems for. Some people find their best friends. But oftentimes, especially at bigger schools, it is a bit more uncertain who you're going to be matched with if you don't have preferences, such as like I'm sure like some similar for like Libby and Gracie at bigger schools. If you go random, it could be someone you'd learn so many new things about, but also someone you could have problems with. My freshman year, I had a very neutral scenario where I wasn't particularly close to my roommates, but we weren't, we did not get along. So it was a perfectly neutral scenario. So my personal advice is if you can to try to pick a roommate beforehand, if your school allows that, because I think it just usually makes it a lot easier of a process for everyone.
I agree with Mustafa. I'm also a tour guide, as I mentioned, so I'm like fighting myself to not give a whole housing spiel. But I think that there's multiple ways you can go about it. I think that you could have a bad roommate if you know them your entire life. You could have a bad roommate situation if you met them random. I think a lot of that comes down to just knowing yourself and knowing your boundaries. And in that, if you get the flexibility to choose between like a single, a double, like depending on how many roommates, just really know what your style is and what you think is going to be best for you, I think is the biggest advice I can give you. But also, I think if you think you can work well with another person, I think would be good to try to live with like in a double your freshman year, as well as I found my roommate through social media. I know a lot of colleges will have social media pages where you can post about yourself before you come into college, and you can find and reach out to other people. And I think that's worked well for a lot of people. So if your schools that are looking at that have that opportunity, I would recommend using that resource.
Well, Civilian Wold and Sergeant Howison, we probably have time for one more question for our panelists here tonight. So I'll leave the two of you to moderate us through the last question.
I guess this really isn't a question, but just thinking back all the way to middle school, high school to now, just what are the words, phrases, statements that you would have how did it end? The webinar is, where are they now? How did we get here? And just, if you guys can just wrap it up by saying, where are you and how did you get here? However you want to do, what's the future going to look like? I think that's the best way to sum it up.
That's perfect. No, that's perfect, Andrew.
Right.
I can start with this one. I just want to say, like, looking back, like, pretty much all my success is, all the credit is due to, my parents and like teachers and the mentors I've met along the way. I guess that's something that I just, took for granted, was how much other people can propel you forward. And like, I would be nowhere without those people. I would just tell my former self, from middle school and high school that, everything will work out exactly how, it's meant to be. And, challenges will be thrown at you, but, you'll end up exactly where you're meant to be. And kind of back to what you guys were saying earlier about getting into routine. Just once you're in the routine of things at a new college, things, life moves a lot faster and it just feels a lot easier. This institution is really good at, not necessarily making it easy for you, but getting, you get better at doing hard things over time. And that's still something I'm navigating. Every time I come back here, it's always kind of, it's always, I'm a little pessimistic going back, especially, being at home with the freedom, being able to sleep in and whatnot. But, once I'm in the routine and once like I'm in the middle of it, it just moves a lot faster and it feels a lot more normal. So just, know that it'll all work out. And just once you're in the routine of things, it's really not that bad. And, you'll figure it out. Most of the things are, don't plan, 4 years in advance for how it's going to turn out. Just, try to live in the moment.
That's great. Libby?
Yeah, I just have to echo everything that Matthew said. I think Mercer Island is such an exceptionally strong community with incredible spirit and driven, sometimes overwhelming and stressful, but academics that have, beyond prepared me for college life. And I'm so grateful to my community that has brought me here, my Mercer Island community, including my parents. I don't know where I would be without my parents or without the Mercer Island community. So I'm so grateful for that. I think if I were to go back in time and tell myself anything as an 8th grader, as a freshman, anytime during high school, I think I would remind myself to be kind to myself. It's all going to work out and we're all doing the best that we can at any given point in time. That's kind of my biggest thing. And I'm excited for what the future holds. And I'm very grateful for Mercer Island for bringing me to the point that I am where I can be excited about that future.
Thanks, Libby. Molly?
I completely agree with both of their sentiments. I think that just not assuming that the 4 years are going to go exactly the way you expect them and plan they're going to go to. I think even going through college, it's great to have goals and to really like work for what you want, but don't just have your heart set on one thing. Make sure to just understand yourself and respect that things can go differently no matter what, no matter how perfect you are. But just work hard and also just let the world take you how it's supposed to be. And I think that you'll end up where you're meant to be no matter what. I didn't think I was going to be here in Syracuse, New York, but I ended up here. So just focus on yourself and, it'll take you where you're meant to be.
Mustafa?
Adding on to that, like, don't let setbacks make you give up. Like, there will be so many setbacks all the time. And you can just keep getting up from them. You keep learning from them because every time you get pushed down, you get a bit stronger. I think at Mercer Island, I had times where I was down, but I got up again. And it led me to where I am now. Even here, sometimes I get, I get disappointed over things, but I think it makes me a stronger student and a stronger person. And that's a part of life. So be appreciative for your successes, but also for your failures, and embrace all of it.
Gracie?
Similar to that, one thing I would tell myself in high school is I was so focused on making, my parents were so supportive, but I was so focused on making them proud. And also this mentality of I have to get into the best school and like post it everywhere. And I was so focused on what other people thought. And I would go back and tell myself, focus on what you're feeling and what will make you happy. And that's still something I have to tell myself. But apply to the club or research that you want to do. Really take advantage of in the moment things and what you want to do as a person and not what other people want you to do, because you will be so much happier.
Andrew, how would you answer it?
I think it's just trust. You have to trust that what you, if you're a parent, have given your kids over the past 18 years, everything you've taught them will work out. Most parents here, I'm sure, were in college. You teach them the skills they need, and they will, go into the swimming pool and they might start to sink a little bit, but everyone swims. There's so many people I've talked to who are swimming and are doing great. And, Mercer Island is the best school. We're not paid to say this. We're not paid to be here. We're, on the East Coast, it's 10:30 and we're here and we're sharing that we love Mercer Island. Matthew has to be up at 5:30 tomorrow. He's here because he loves Mercer Island, and Mercer Island put him there. And I think a lot of times people get wrapped up in these thoughts and these things. It works out. You've taught your kids as a kid. You've been through the Mercer Island school system for 4 years, 2 years, 12 years. It's prepared you. You will be fine. It's going to work out. No matter where you go or what you do, you have the skills. You have the skills to be successful. Mercer Island builds leaders, and we are all leaders in our own right. No matter what major, where we're going, or what we're doing, we're all leaders, and every class continues to lead and take the next step. And where are they now? Well, we're successful and we're leading, and we're the next generation. So back to you guys.
Andrew, thank you for helping us organize this event tonight. I know that you called in a lot of favors for your friends and alumni to join us, but it does touch me that all of you got a chance to kind of spend your evening with us and dedicate the time to help others and to help our Mercer Island community. So just from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you to all of our alumni that have joined us this evening. Really, really special, this experience. I love that when Mustafa goes off screen, it's a Superman logo. I think it's just like, oh my gosh, I love this more than anything. It's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. You are Superman, Mustafa, so way to go. But it's just, thank you. Thank you for the bottom of my heart for joining us to help inform our students for sure and our families. Fred?
So just to wrap things up, you are amazing, and we have gift cards for you, even though you're not paid. We do have gift cards for you. Mr. Wold's and my preference is that you come and visit us so we can take you out for coffee and give you this gift card, pay for your coffee, and then give you gift cards. But so when you're in town next, please drop by. If I don't see you in the next few months, I will mail it to you. But my hope is that you swing by. We'd love to take you out to coffee or lunch and express our appreciation for your time tonight. From our community, I know that this will help students learn, for our families to learn, and also for our faculty and staff to know what do we need to continue to do and what are some things that we can continue to improve on from that. And then certainly thank you to our community who helps to provide that foundation, from our PTAs and our schools foundations, our YFS counselors, our teachers, principals, school nurses, coaches, everyone who makes it happen. It's all of us who are trying to build a foundation for students like the ones we're seeing on our screens tonight, because when we all work together, we can launch them. And I think this is testament to an incredible student body that we get to work with each day. So with that, students, thank you so much. Thank you, Andrew, again, for reaching out and getting some of your former colleagues there. Seriously, please swing by if you get a chance. We'd love to see you in person as well. Mr. Wold, thank you, and have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Bye.